because Noga Tarnopolsky is in Jerusalem, a freelance journalist who has been of enormous help to us in unpicking the detail of the continuing conflict and, crucially, I think, the domestic political situation in Israel. It's probably fair to say, Noga, that you derive no pleasure whatsoever from having been proved right about almost everything. So let's just pick up on a couple of recent developments. Protesters in Israel have accused Benjamin Netanyahu of ordering the latest round of airstrikes to provide, quotes, cover for a campaign to dismantle Israel's democratic system and maintain his own grip on power. And these are groups representing Israeli hostages. We know that one of the far-right previous members of his cabinet has reopened cooperation as a consequence of the fighting recommencing. We know that Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, opposed the ceasefire deal from the start. And we know latterly that the latest round of assaults overnight, ground assaults, deal a blow to any hopes of restoring the fragile truce with Hamas, the nature of the ground attacks, ground operations, raising fears for the hostages. So even the London Times goes with the headline, Israel launches ground assault on Gaza in blow to hostage hopes. That pretty much covers it, I think.
Yes, that covers it. And you're calling me today on a historic day. And you're right that it gives me absolutely no pleasure to report on what's happening here, but I think it's important to report. The maybe you can find an image of this for your listeners. The cover page of the widest read newspaper in Israel, the tabloid Yediot Achronot. It's the most popular paper. What it says on the cover today is there are no adults in the room.
Wow.
And the cover, the leader is a story about how the government is perpetrating a coup d'etat today, is getting rid of the last gatekeepers, doing so illegally. And all this, it says, is happening while Israel is sinking into the Gazan mud. So what you just said is now a widespread, acknowledged by even the most mainstream media outlets. It's not just an opposition thing right now.
I've got the front page, and I will share it with my listeners, but it is in Hebrew, so I don't know how many of them are going to be able to. I don't know how many of them are going to.
That's a good point. But I thought, just the graphic layout is dramatic.
Absolutely.
You see this big headline in the middle of the page. The leaders of all free media in Israel today are similar, but the one in Yediot is very dramatic.
Yes.
And this really a quick description of the manner in which Netanyahu has gone about dismantling all of the system, the parliamentary system of Israel's democracy, such that today there is not really an independent parliament. There's not an independent even cabinet. You don't have a cabinet with a variety of opinions. And he's planning to vote to get rid of the head of the Domestic Security Agency tonight. This is an illegal vote. It has been determined not to be a legal move by the Attorney General. And Netanyahu plans to vote to fire that Attorney General on Sunday, at the beginning of next week.
Because, well, I mean, we can speculate as to the why, but there's no speculation in saying the Attorney General is investigating corruption allegations made against key aides of Netanyahu.
Yes, the public prosecution is doing that investigation. Actually, there have been really incredible revelations in the last 2 days, undenied. Important to say, undenied revelations that show that some of Netanyahu's top aides, some of the people closest to him inside the bubble of the Prime Minister's office, were on the Qatari payroll during this war, also before the war, but during this war. And his top media aides were working for him and simultaneously running a PR campaign for Qatar. I can quote former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who is no lefty himself, who said that if Netanyahu knew about it, then we're talking about an investigation into treason on the part of the Prime Minister. And if he didn't, it's one of the gravest security breaches in the history of the state. So Netanyahu, who is already on trial for corruption, as you remember,
Yeah.
is now attempting to just dismantle the entire system when faced with these new charges or new suspicions.
How much support does he personally still enjoy in Israel?
He enjoys very little support. He enjoys somewhere between 20%, maybe some polls show up to 25%. The vast majority of Israelis, around 73% of Israelis, said in a poll run by the nonpartisan Israel Democracy Institute about 10 days ago, said he should resign. And thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets in the last 2 days. Since he announced he was firing the head of the Shin Bet, there have been spontaneous and then organized protests of, tens of thousands at least people. The issue is that it appears that Netanyahu's understanding of these polls, or the consequence of these polls and these protests, from Netanyahu's point of view, is not to say that maybe he should go, but to propel him to hold on ever tighter,
Of course.
because he's an unpopular and weak prime minister.
And when he goes straight from the Prime Minister's house to the dock in a criminal court.
That's right. And he's scheduled to be testifying tomorrow. He tried to get out of his testimony again this week. This time the court put a stop to him. I have to say one thing. It really does appear that Netanyahu's confidence in himself and his determination to just shatter the system of parliamentary democracy in Israel has gotten a big boost from Netanyahu's interactions with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now,
You've literally just preempted my next question, so I'll just keep quiet and let you carry on. No, that's it. I mean, how big a difference has Trump made to this situation?
A very big difference. Netanyahu has been wanting to pursue, this kind of autogolpe, right? This coup d'état against himself, apparently, right? As a legitimately elected prime minister, he's trying to a power grab. And he's been wanting to do this since he formed this government, which was December 29th of 2022. His only public policy initiative, the government's only initiative ahead of the Hamas attack of October 7th, was this attempt to recreate Israel as basically a country run by an unfettered executive. Netanyahu last night put out many statements, one of which was a video in which he's seen sauntering around the Knesset. This was put out around midnight, and he points to a potted plant and said, "This is what the Attorney General wants me to be." But no, and he's arguing that the deep state, he uses this term, that the deep state is trying to unseat him, that this is a cabal, he says, of leftist anti-democrats,
Wow.
I'm quoting,
Yeah.
and that he is the one who's going to restore equilibrium to the state of Israel. So it's very widespread here in Israel. This is being understood as an historic day. Of course, assuming the vote does go through this evening, there will be immediate, urgent appeals to the Supreme Court to declare this firing illegal. And so, the cabinet vote may not be enforceable, but still, the Israeli government has chosen now officially and brazenly a route of complete lawlessness.
It's notable how many, I mean, you won't have been listening, but we've been talking about Donald Trump's administration for most of the morning, and it's extraordinary how many of the words you're using have popped up in this conversation that popped up prior, when we talk about the hollowing out of institutions, when we talk about contempt for the rule of law, when we talk about trying to create an untrammeled executive, an executive unguarded, really, unopposed by traditional institutions that protect the people from authoritarianism and even from dictatorship. Can he be stopped, Noga?
Well, there are two people who could stop him, are the two who he's trying to fire this weekend. The Shin Bet, the Israeli version of MI5, is statutorily charged with protecting the institutions of the Israeli democratic regime. So the head of the Shin Bet is one of the people who could say the prime minister now presents a clear and present danger to the state, to the institutions of the state. The other one is the Attorney General, who also could write a letter establishing the basis for Netanyahu to be declared unfit to serve because he no longer believes in the rule of law.
Right.
It's not a coincidence that these are the last gatekeepers standing in Israel. And it's not a coincidence that he's trying to get them both fired this weekend. In fact, the very extremist minister you just mentioned, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who Netanyahu appointed to be head of domestic security in Israel, despite the fact that he is a man who's been convicted 13 times of hate crimes and terror. He's a guy whose entire career before entering politics was as a thug and as a threat to society. He quit the parliament on January 19th to protest the ceasefire. And yesterday, with the resurgence of war, he returned to the government. Now, this is also an important point. Not his return, but the fact that that too is illegal. He is under investigation for abusing his power as the minister in charge of police. And as someone under criminal investigation, he cannot legally be appointed minister. Again, yesterday, the Attorney General made it clear in writing to the Prime Minister that he does not have the right to appoint this man as the minister in charge of domestic security. Netanyahu and his cabinet went ahead with it nonetheless, and they're just making it completely clear that the rule of law at least does not apply to them.
Crikey. Thank you for covering so much ground in a relatively short amount of time. I'd ask you finally and briefly, did you ever think you would see events like this in Israel?
Never. Never. All throughout 2023, before the Hamas attack, it was clear that Netanyahu was attempting to take a power grab. And I have Latin American origins. I know what power grabs look like, and it was clear to me what he was trying. But the institutions of the State of Israel still were able to mount a defense against his efforts at that time. And that now seems to be crumbling.
Well, we should continue, with your help, Noga Tarnopolsky, to keep a close eye on proceedings. Noga talking to us live there from Jerusalem. And if you've been wondering, or if you are wondering, even in the course of that conversation, why media outlets, individuals and organs, stations, newspapers, who have been absolutely unquestioning in their dedication to supporting Israel's actions in Gaza, to supporting Netanyahu, if you're wondering why they've gone all a bit quiet, the kind of people who described the protests against the killings in Gaza as being pro-Hamas or anti-Semitic. I think you now know why they've all gone a bit quiet, because Netanyahu became indefensible some time ago.